This podcast is brought to you by Cash App. When personal finance connects you to both your funds and the stuff that matters, that's money, and that's Cash App. You know what else is money? Choosing your own cash tag. That's money. Picking the cash tag, world's youngest baby. Using it to request the $50 your squirrely cousin owes you. Actually finally getting that $50. That's money. Your table at brunch, agreeing French toast is for sharing. Splitting the karaoke bill while still holding the high note. That's money. Digging a hole with friends. Digging out of that hole with friends. That's money. Hearing a wildly good musician on the train home and tipping their cash tag. That's money.
Watching a fine pastry float down a river. That's money. Getting a slice of pepperoni pizza from Feeney Pizza. That's money. Getting paid to read a wonderful ad script for my good friends at Cash App. That's money. Sending everyone in the group chat a good night dollar. That's money. Waking up to all those good morning dollars. That's definitely money.
Winning a very large Boo-ray pot. That's money.
That is certainly money. Sending, spending, saving, investing, splitting, tipping, donating, gifting, or just typing numbers, all with the #1 finance app in the App Store. That's money.
That's money. That's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store today to add your cash tag to the community of millions and counting. All right, let's welcome in Hasan. Hasan, thank you so much for doing this, man. Really, really excited about this week. You've got a new Netflix special out, The King's Jester. There's a lot of revealing information.
TMI, dare I say?
From the jump.
During the episode. But there's one thing I just want to confirm.
Yeah.
You are the proud owner and driver of a Honda Odyssey. That wasn't a
correct.
myth?
Yeah, it's Instagram conferred, getting confirmed. Yeah, it was in feed.
Yeah.
Shout out to White Plains Honda, still leasing $968 a month. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have a white Honda Odyssey.
Oh yeah, but we have the black, and it's the leather interior.
We do have the leather interior.
Yes. This is why you guys are friends.
Yeah,
so weird.
It's a great car. It's a great car. It's a great car.
During 2020, when we came back to the city in June before I left for the bubble, I was driving to the gym. We weren't taking Ubers. I was trying to not get COVID. So I would drive the Honda Odyssey everywhere. And I had multiple people text me and be like, dude, I thought I just saw you in Brooklyn, but it was some guy driving a Honda Odyssey. I was like, there's no way that's JJ. But no, it's
a power move. Did you ever see that footage during the 98 finals and John Stockton pulls up in the minivan? Like, to me, that's a power move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To not need to drive that car, but driving that car to me is like a flex.
It's also just convenient.
It's also a great car. Like I don't know a better car that accommodates me, like 2 kids, mother-in-law.
Don't you think part of it is, I mean, you've lived in LA. This is a thing that matters specifically in LA. And no one else cares what you drive anywhere else, in my opinion. Yeah, I feel like it's like unique to that city.
It gets flattened in New York. It's just like, hey, look, man, it's an Uber and train city.
Yeah, it's even like surprising if you even have a car.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't even need a car in certain cases. And so
yeah. It was a moment. Did you walk into the dealership to get it?
Yeah.
When I walked into the dealership, they recognized me and they were like, what?
What?
Because they were like, is this your first car that you're purchasing? I'm like, yeah. They go, what did you have before? And I didn't have a car at all ever since I moved here for the Daily Show. So it had been 9 years. So I didn't need a car. And I was like, I had been driving my dad's Toyota Camry while I was living in LA. So that's the last car that I'd ever driven.
I got my Odyssey about a month after we moved down to New Orleans. So I was actively playing. And so yeah, there was a little bit of that too. Like, kind of like, why are you here with what you're getting a white Honda Odyssey?
No, I love it.
The other thing you said was funny. I'm not going to try to give away too much of
Give it away, man. It's streaming now. Give it away.
You mentioned that when you would pull up to a stoplight in a Toyota Camry, and people would try to get in the car. And when I was in LA, I drove for the whole time. I drove a black Chevy Tahoe.
Yeah.
And literally the same thing happened. My teammates would tell me I drove an Uber. Like, it was like I drove the black SUV.
They had stickers on the back too. Look, they may laugh at you, but they've never been paid to drive home from Trader Joe's. So
that's true.
Your boy's out here hustling.
Do you want to give the audience, I mean, everybody should watch this, as soon as you listen to it. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on how you craft these things visually? Because, we were saying before, there's a lot of specials that come out every year, but this is now your second one on Netflix. And both of them have a very unique, very distinct style that's takes a lot of planning, both with you and Prashant and the rest of your team. Do you want to kind of give them a little bit of background of just even like the words aside and the comedy aside, how you put the whole aesthetic together?
Yeah, for me, I see live performance. I'm massively inspired by Broadway, and just I've always been a visual storyteller. Like I've been enamored with visual storytelling since I was a kid. I don't know if we talked about this before, but we didn't have cable TV in the house, so I didn't get to see a lot of NBA games growing up, but my dad would let me get Slam magazine. And so just the visual like representation of like text, photos, like kicks of the week, dunk of the slam of the week, all that stuff. And I kind of was like, oh, font, kerning, like how do you frame things? And then, growing up watching movies. And then finally, when I moved to New York, getting to see Broadway and stage shows, I was like, oh, this is a way in which you can make things feel like an experience. Stand-up in its purest form it's really just a basement kind of nightclub act. I'm going to go into this basement, and it's a uniquely American art form like jazz. Go into this basement. I'm going to say some wild things. We're all adults here. And then, all right, the evening's over. If you don't see that live, it's a very difficult thing to capture. And for me, just the medium of cinema is such a visual thing to show. So I wanted to show kind of the grandeur of what is possible in the genre through lighting design, stage design, art design, all that stuff. And if anyone here is like a art fan, James Turrell was a huge inspiration. And if you've seen James Turrell's work in Hotline Bling, the Drake video, or Dua Lipa's videos, but he communicates emotion through color. So the big kind of stone Turrellian oval and the Oculus that's above me is inspired by Turrell. And coming from, Patriot Act and Homecoming King, which were so graphics heavy, I wanted to find another way to communicate, kind of emotion.
The balance is great.
This is really dorky, but like following Bradley Beal, this is the dorkiest thing ever. Dude, people are just like opting out of the episode. This is like, I completely understand. Why would you stick around? But,
it's interesting you bring up sort of the audience, right? When you do a special, there's the audience at home. I watched the special this morning on my laptop. My TVs were actually being installed today in our rental, so I finally get some TVs. But and you're watching at home, and there's definitely a different feeling than being in the room. That's why I think the visual component of your show is so good. But as the performer, and we've talked about this because we've done a couple live shows, and I've done public speaking or whatever. As the performer, the feeling, right, of having the live audience sort of, waiting on your every word, waiting for the punchline. What is that like?
I mean, it's awesome.
Is that the high?
That is the reason why you do it. But honestly, man, like the reason why you get into this, I think performing in any capacity, whether it's sports or even comedy, there's this feeling that you have something burning inside of you that you want to say. That's just you've had inside of you your whole life, or that day or that moment, and you just have this desire to share it with people. People's response through laughter, and laughter is an involuntary response. Like I can't force you to laugh, is the ultimate kind of cosign on what your thoughts are. So, growing up, I don't know if you ever felt this, but you were always like, I felt this for sure. I'm like, hey, am I crazy? Is this weird? And so much of, to me, my favorite comedy is that ability to kind of convey your story through, confession, or being kind of like bold and honest,
So you taped the special in Brooklyn, but that was at the end of a crazy year-long tour.
Yeah.
I saw the show a couple times. I saw it in
you
LA,
saw it at the Microsoft Theater in LA, and that's a different feeling too.
I saw it at Radio City too.
Yeah.
How often would you update and adapt the creative while things were going on in the world that might affect, the sort of tone of the show?
Yeah. So for me, like, I see the show while you're touring it like this living, breathing thing. So the threads of the story, you keep kind of, for me, I see it almost like a sculpture. It's like, hey, I have this blob, this thing that I'm working on. And every performance, you're just like sculpting away at it and you're refining it. And the biggest thing that I'm chasing all the time is clarity. Do you understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying it? And if you do it well, and my goal is that hopefully when you finish the 67 minutes, you're like, man, that was a great basket weave. The thing he talked about 2 minutes in, he pays off 64 minutes later. Oh man, the thing he set up here, he answers here. Or the thing that in the magic, the great storytellers that I take the most amount of inspiration from, Spalding Gray, Dave Chappelle, Richard Pryor, they do it effortlessly. You don't see the strings. You don't see the parlor trick. You've probably felt that with basketball, right? Like the great players are the ones where you're like, I don't know how you did that.
The great players are the ones where you're sitting on the bench in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that guy's not playing very well tonight. And you look up and it's like, no, he's got 28 and 12.
Oh, wow.
You know?
But when you watch like a great player, say like Steph,
yeah,
are you able to be like, yeah, I see how he did that, like dribble, hesitation, step back? Or do you see the mechanics of it? Like, do you know how hard it is to pull off that thing that he just did?
The best players you marvel at.
Yeah.
What Luka does with a basketball,
Yeah.
what Steph does, what Giannis does. There's a reason they're the best, right? They have something that no one else has. And all of their skills, the three guys I named and any great player, their skills are all different. But it's just better than everyone else, you know? Did you see the NBA rank thing, by the way?
Yeah, I did see the NBA rank thing. Yeah.
Do you have any opinions on that?
I'm amazed. Well, I agree with number one being Giannis.
Okay,
I agree with that. And I love what he said today, where even in media day, he was like, yeah, but Steph's the best because he won a championship. But we'll get to that later as to why I think he's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of internet chatter about what they got wrong or right.
I don't think a lot of people realize this though. So they change.
Who makes it? What metric is it based on?
It's a panel of ESPN writers and reporters and analysts, people around the league.
It's like the television.
It's not. They're not asking. Like, this is a different thing. They do like a survey of GMs and they'll say best player, to the GMs, and that's one thing. But I don't think people realize the process of this. They changed it a few years ago. People used to just rank players. They started 100. I think one year they ranked like all the way to like 350 or something.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
it was like NBA 2K. They're like, oh, we're gonna count for everybody.
My kids are over here listening in on the thing, and Knox always asks me. He's always like, "Dad, who's the worst player in the NBA?"
Oh, that's
and I'm like, "It's
savage.
all relative, man. It's all relative." Who's the guy? Oh, you always talk about Taco Fall. He thinks Taco Fall is
the worst player.
No, he thinks he's like great, and I'm like,
oh, that's hilarious.
Taco Fall really has not had much of a career yet. I hope he does, but there's a fascination there. But anyways, they basically take two players, they send two players, and they're like, would you rather have this guy or this guy? Would you rather have this guy or this guy? Yes.
Now, did you vote on this? Are you?
No, I'm not. I don't get any votes. As of right now, I'm not getting any like all NBA votes or MVP votes. I'm not part of the panel yet.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm not. But anyways, I was having this conversation. I was golfing yesterday, and I was playing this course outside Boston that was phenomenal. And I was like, man, it doesn't make sense that this is ranked whatever 61st or 54th, and then another course is ranked 23rd. And the guy I was playing with, he's a scratch golfer. He's like, to me, it's tiers, right? And I think that way about players a little bit too. And we analyze teams on, TV or whatever. And it's like, well, there's like contenders, there's like real contenders, and then there's like fake contenders or whatever. And so I think there's probably in any given year, there's like 3 or 4 guys. Then there's like 8 to 12 guys. And then there's like another 10 guys. And then like 20 to 60. Like, I don't know that there's that big a difference. 60 to 100. I don't know that there's that big a difference.
What's that list? You're saying that list is like that top elite categories. You said 20?
Yeah. Well, here's one thing to think. I did this exercise the other day. I think we actually talked about this maybe with Bradley. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 active players that have been the best player on a championship team. You think about that, right? So Giannis, Bron, Kawhi, Steph, and I may be missing one.
Right.
But in terms of active players, like, so that's like a T, or Kevin Durant.
Sure.
Of course. Kevin was the 5th. So
when people online get mad about Trae Young not being high enough,
being whatever he was, 31 or versus 18.
Like, how is he not top 10 or whatever? Yeah.
Well, and we got into this argument, or not argument, we actually all agreed, but we got into discussion because of the Dame conversation, where we were talking about whether Dame is whether
Dame is a superstar.
Yeah, whether he's a superstar in this tier, and it's because Dame has not won a championship, but there's so many factors that go into play that have nothing to do with anything Dame has done on the court.
You know what's interesting? The analogy with show business is it does come down to lists. For any given thing, you'll read about this with a movie or with the Oscars or who's hosting the Emmys or the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Like, I'll tell you candidly, they do have a list. They're like, there are these 5 names. There are these 10 names. And really, I think what the metric comes down to is who can get this job done and who can you like absolutely bet on to get that done. It's really like 10 guys.
Yeah.
5 guys that you can probably list. Does the same thing you think work with basketball when you're like, look, let's talk shooting guards. If you have a 2 or 3 spot, how many guys is it? It's probably 10, right?
Yeah, positionally. Yeah,
yeah, that are really in the conversation.
Maybe less at certain positions. The other thing, I
if you were Trae Young, but would you take it personally though? I couldn't. Candidly, like if you were,
I mean, I saw something on Twitter today. John Wall at Media Day said something about, I feel like, I've been disrespected or underappreciated or something like that my whole career. I want to be like, dude, you were All-American in high school. You were the number 1 pick. You have multiple max contracts. You made all-star teams, all NBA. Like, I don't know that like you've been overlooked. You know what I mean? But every guy thinks they're being overlooked.
But that's it. We talk about this with all these guys because they all, and rightfully so in certain cases, have chips on their shoulders. And that's what drives
That's why they're in the NBA. That's why they're in the NBA.
They are. Dame has it. First guest we had on the Old Man of the Three. We in the middle of an incredible run in the bubble. He's talking about this chip on his shoulder and this drive and this had no matter what he accomplishes, he's always going to want more, and he's going to read anyone who tries to downplay what he's accomplished in any way.
But I think this is actually a more interesting metric that I think is better, because when I hear, look, this is me as a fan. So I want you during this podcast, please check me as a fan, because when I have casuals talk about comedy as an art form, it does irk me too. So here's my issue as a fan. If you have a chip on your shoulder about your NBA 2K like rating, but it's not about winning, that is very frustrating to me as a fan. Like, how do you define winning? And when it comes to these like power rankings or 2K rankings, that's what kind of irritates me as a fan. And being a Kings fan, that's what's very painful, because the only thing that matters is winning in a playoff berth. That's all I care about.
Well, I would say one key difference between,
and it's an objective reality. That's what's I'm so envious of you athletes.
Well, this is the thing. So
you have an objective way to determine how well something went. Versus art of like, people are like, I don't like that show, and you're an idiot, and there's no way to determine.
Or you're like, you can't, like Hasan can't open a movie because his movie doesn't do well at the box office for some arbitrary reason. All of a sudden, it's like, that guy's done. We're not going to give him any parts. Versus like, you're on the team. Even if you have, even John this year, John has not played in 2 years. If John is great, if John is great for the Clippers this year, everyone is going to forget everything from the last 2 years.
So that to me is how would you, when you were playing, do you define winning? For me, and maybe it's because I'm a 90s kid and we're roughly the same age, to me, it's about the things that last beyond the week to week ESPN media just roll. Sorry. But what are you going to look back on like 4 years from now and be like, oh yeah, that still holds to be factually true? And I think like the legacies of the Tim Duncans, the Nowitzkis, guys that I don't even like. I wasn't even fans of them. Yeah. The Garnetts, the Ray Allens, those things last because of objective metrics of like, oh yeah, they did win that playoff series. Oh yeah, he did hit that clutch 3 and they won Game 7 because of it.
It was about winning, but the other metric, like, I never worried about my 2K rating. I mean, I didn't even play 2K. Literally did not play 2K until Knox started playing 2K. Like, and he's better than me. But I think most players' of metric is what your salary is. Like, once you get beyond your rookie contract, because you're comparing it to players like you. Okay. Right. And if you're like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you're a guy who wants to be a superstar, right, whatever that means, we still haven't defined it quite well. Yeah. If you are a guy who wants to be a superstar and you're offered a contract that's below max on your rookie extension, right? You're like hurt. You think you're getting screwed, and you're like, dude, you're signing for $120 million over 4 years. Like, no one's you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's posturing on the 2K stuff. I think the salary stuff is real because that's your livelihood.
Yeah. And
right?
you only have a window to make it. And
it's fun.
I hear that.
I felt like I was relatively always fairly paid. I never felt like, oh, that guy got that. And I was always happy. Like when other guys got paid, even if I was like, did he deserve that? I'm not sure. I was happy about that. I was always happy for guys.
Can I say something again? When it comes to people's pocketbooks, their livelihoods, and how they pay for their families, I want to be really sensitive to that and understanding and go, hey, I have no right to determine what is enough or not enough for you. People are supporting like a spouse, kids, sometimes other family members. I totally get it. They're trying to establish generational wealth. I totally get that. Let's talk about those players numbers 1 through 30 on this arbitrary list that I seem to hate and the internet seems to hate. At that point, those 30 players are post-economic, the types of deals that we're getting. And I want to delineate 2 different buckets here. There's are players getting a fair chunk of the whole pie? That's one argument. Let's just talk about now just brass tacks. What is actually hitting your Wells Fargo bank account? I know you guys have Wells Fargo accounts, but you get what I'm saying. All those 30 players are now post-economic. There is no financial decision they will make that will probably put them in a bad situation. So then what could it possibly be? It can't be about money now. What is it about? And my frustration as a fan is I think you're focused on the wrong things. Even if you were to take 2 max contracts and put it in the S&P 500, how many players out of your era are going to be billionaires? It's going to be at least 10 to 20 players.
We've talked about this. The way the cap is going up, you don't even have to be a top 5 player.
So actually, when you distill this down to what actually matters is, okay, cool, bro. So you're very rich. What are you doing with that money? What do you want to do with that money? And what do you want to do now that that's off the table? And to me, that's more of a testament to who you are, what you care about, and your character.
Yeah, but I do think those guys that I just named, like winning matters to them. Like, and they've all made and will make a ton more money. The reason I bring up the money thing is because it is another metric for us as athleets
of what you're worth. And you could people go, this
example,
this person
PGA Tour, the tennis tour, right? You can't really compare because you win and then you get paid based on how far you go in a tournament or how well you do in a tournament, right? So in basketball, you're unfortunately you're comparing yourself to other players like you. And of course, because there's a max contract, right? Those guys are like, LeBron can't make any more money than he's made. Steph can't make any more money than he's made. And so it's like, whether it's the NBA rank, whether it's your 2K rating, like that's part of like how you continue to develop that chip on your shoulder. It's just part of the equation. I'm not saying it's all of the equation, but most guys, I think the knock, by the way, if the takeaway from this conversation is like all athletes care about is winning, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying it's part of the equation.
Got it.
I think the idea, the notion that that's true, that athletes only care about money, they don't care about winning. I've lived it for 15 years. I think maybe you're talking about 10%. I think you're talking about 20%. Right. I think it's so low that those guys stand out so much. And I could name them. I'm not going to name them. I could name them. I know which guys don't give a fuck about winning, right? It's, by the way, it's not just money. It's like, it's fame. It's fame. You actually had a bit. Speaking of that, you had a bit on the show, on the King's Jester, where you talk about sort of the addictive nature of fame and social media clout, likes, retweets. I think any human being can relate to that. Fame as it relates to your craft. You talked about your first joke that hit. I don't want to ruin the story because we'll let the viewers watch it. But when your first joke hit, and then as you sort of moved into comedy, was fame part of the equation? Was that pursuit, was that drug part of the equation of why you wanted to continue to develop your craft?
It started, for me, comedy started as it was a form of agency. Like, man, I do this thing and the world is so confusing. Like the world, especially when I'm 14, 15 years old, that's when I kind of first found out I was funny. I felt powerless at school. I worked at Office Max, definitely felt powerless there. You know what I mean? I was like selling printers, like very powerless. In relation to my parents, my dad is a pretty strict, dad, it was the first thing that kind of gave me agency and control over my life. And the moment that, jokes land, it's like it's this moment where kind of like time slows down and you really do almost like stoically, like everything feels right in the world for that moment. And it's a really beautiful feeling as a human being to feel that. And, you continue to pursue this thing that is a dream. And I'm sure athletes, musicians, everybody who then does it in the public eye and gets paid for it, it can quickly become, you can get pulled away from that. And one of the things that I wrote down when I was working on the show, what's really important for me is, hey man, before I make fun of anybody else, I got to kind of indict myself. And one of the questions that I wrote down in regards to that was, can you do the right thing for the wrong reasons? And there were a lot of times where, because I knew how to work something into a frenzy, my intention wasn't right. And the reason why I was doing it wasn't right. And I'm sure you can relate to that as someone who now works in media. You understand the machine. You understand how the circus of it can work. I can say something in 90 seconds or 2 minutes. That'll get clipped out on Twitter. That'll get 1.8 million views. I'll quote tweet. I'll dunk on the thing. That'll get whipped into a frenzy. Shams will pick it up. Patrick Beverley will talk about it. Stephen A. Smith will react to the reaction and then like rinse, wash, and repeat. And before you know it, you've now taken some comment that you've made and it's perpetuated out to 10 million people.
Plumbers and firemen. There's an example of that. Yeah. Which that entire thing has morphed into something else.
Yeah.
Where I went from providing some context. I mean, that's the problem too, is like it's the clips, right? The clips, they get aggregated everywhere and social blogs, everything.
Yeah.
And you lose the context of the entire conversation. Correct. Right?
By the way, and that's something I talk about in the special too, the jurisprudence of jokes and hey, to the extent to which I can trust an audience. But I got to give you credit, man. And I told you this privately, but the incentive to get pulled into the circus is very high. And as someone who spent years and years working in kind of satirical news media, you can get pulled in very quickly because the cottage industry of that is, it needs to be fed every day. And for you to operate as a good faith actor, man, like I really applaud that.
But I the reason I brought this thing up with the likes and the retweets is like, there were times last year, never going into a first take or never going into a studio hit or doing a game. I never went in with any bad intentions, with any like, I'm gonna fucking go viral today. Never thought about it once. But the drug, the sort of addictive nature of seeing something blow up, there were times I had to catch myself.
And I saw your first thing go viral and it says in all caps on YouTube, it's like JJ Redick checks Stephen A. Smith. And I'm like, oh dude, he's getting the hit.
And so I would have to I would have to check myself and just be like, okay. And my thing is different than your thing, because a lot of the stuff you talk about are actual real world problems. 90% of what I talk about is basketball and tears. And it doesn't really matter. Some of it does, but most of it doesn't. So you're like, I just always had to kind of put it in perspective a little bit, if that makes sense. By the way, Tom, I don't know if I told you this. So I'm like 6 weeks into doing ESPN and First Take. And he starts texting me and he's like, dude, I'm on the road. I started down this YouTube rabbit hole. I've watched a bunch of your First Take clips. He's like, I think I got some jokes for you. So he sends me like 3 5-minute voice notes.
Full voice memos
of jokes that I can use with Stephen A. And so the next time I go in, I think I used the Kim Kardashian, Pete Davidson joke you gave me.
Yes. This is why, by the way, I want to do this on the record right now. I actually think this is why you are a bad friend. You know what? We talk about this in the NBA, mental health, this, that, and the other. Let's talk about my mental health. I'm 37 years old. I have no friends. And what's important, you hit a certain age as a guy, it's important that you start reaching out and you start going, hey, I'm going to extend an olive branch. And I've said this on stage, unless it's golf, gambling, or video games, grown men have no friends. Chelsea has so many friends, right?
So many friends.
My wife has multiple best friends. Men of a certain age, unless it involves one of these vices, we have no way to be like, hey man, I see you. So I reach out to this guy. I'm on the road in Detroit. I reach out to this guy. I go, hey man, I see what you're doing. I see you. I say what maybe his father never told him. I see you. And then I start giving him, I'm just script writing for him.
For free.
Like I'm just chief of staff, just Mr. Redick, here are your, or you could do this, just long voicemail. Try to call him, nothing. Like, hey, what did you think? Nothing.
Wait, you're saying I didn't text you back?
You did text me back, but I tried to get on the phone with you to like have a conversation. You know, like
That's too much.
bro, you're too grown.
That's too much.
Do not
That's a bridge too
do
far.
not play
You
this
can
like
send-
you're 19 years old and you just got drafted. We're grown men.
No,
like we can
that's
get on the
too- no,
phone
that's too
and
much.
and
You gotta-
actually talk to each
Hurry,
other.
But you're not going to go.
Did you really call
Yes.
in the moment while we were texting back
Dude,
and
I'm
forth?
lonely on the road.
Oh, man, I am a
these
bad
are
friend
core
for that.
memories. Yeah.
I'm a bad
and
friend for
and
that.
by the way, this is you doing a grown man thing. Like now you're an adult, you have children, but then you're also doing this like kid thing of being like, we'll talk about it on the podcast. We'll do it for content.
It's work.
Can we have a real connection without
It's work.
content? Legitimately, like I can't.
Wait, so how many of them did you end up using?
I can't even hang out with Tommy without going to one of his freaking Illuminati dinners of, hey, there's 9 other people. Tommy, I'll hang out with you just for you.
So how many?
I'm going to end it at
how
that.
many
Yeah.
did you
I have a,
use?
here, I have a. Do you not have any friends in Greenwich? Is this what's happening right
This
now?
is also.
I'm being.
This is such bullshit.
What do you
because
mean? Don't you dare. Hold your tongue in front of these children.
This is such bullshit because JJ and I are both available in New York. You are on the road all the time.
Yes.
You can never do anything. It's taken 9 months to get this podcast set up.
Dude, I sound like your mother right now. So pick up the phone.
So he just
I straight up sound like your mother, Tommy. Like, pick up the phone.
He just wants to be called. I will say.
Were the notes good?
The
What?
notes are always good.
Do you appreciate the notes?
I have now become a voice memo guy.
Okay, great.
Partially because of you.
Yeah.
I have one other
You were
friend.
first on that.
I
Yeah.
You were
have
first
one
on
other
that.
friend that does it all the time, and I'm like, dude, this is actually. So I was walking the other day.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me a question. I'm like, that's too long to type. Gave him a minute fit. Ryan Rucco, our guy Ryan Rucco. He sent me.
You
sent me
get
something.
voice, tenor, tone, inflection. And it lets you, I'll let you pick up
The
and
only,
deal with this.
the
whenever
only
you're
problem
free.
with it is
What's up?
it goes away. It goes away. I think that's a problem.
No, you go keep, and then you keep it.
You
I
can
don't
keep it.
All right.
Yeah, you
I
can
should
keep it.
Yeah, you can keep it.
You can keep it.
You can keep
I like the going
Wait,
away.
can I? Who are your boys? Like, do you have friends from Roanoke, Virginia? Like your boys, like the guys you grew. Any of them?
I took Knox and Kai
Yeah.
to Ryan Hergruder's house outside Boston this past weekend. He does a yearly backyard food truck band. It's the first time I've ever been able to go. I've known Ryan since I was 8 years old.
He's your best friend.
Absolutely. Like best friend from high school, known him 30 years. Yes. There's 4 or 5 guys that I talked to from high school. But you know what's funny? Like, I think a lot of our closest friends
Yeah.
have been since we've had children.
Wow.
And like, it's part of the reason,
Through
like
school?
some through school.
Dude, I go on these like arranged marriage friendship dates. I'm like, I have nothing in common with these goobers.
Don't you think some of your friends are also just the like Riz, for example? I don't know if he's your best friend, but some of your friends are just the
You
proximity.
sound
thing.
8 years old. Is that sad?
No, but like it's
Knox,
like-
who's your best friend?
yeah, but like it's a
Wait. Knox, who's your best friend?
Who's your best friend? You said the other day in Brian's backyard. I asked you, are you and Kai best friends? And you gave me the craziest look. And you were like, of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? Okay. I think he's a little nervous.
Do you have a best friend? Mine is Chris Michelet. We're best friends since middle school. We're still friends.
But for me, it's also like a lot of teammates.
Yeah.
Like it's not just the guys I grew up playing sports with, baseball, basketball, whatever. It's like
Like the Duke guys, the high school guys, or even
I would say
NBA
more
guys?
NBA guys.
Really?
Yeah. Some of my closest friends. I would say I talked like in terms of texting.
Rashard Lewis is still a close friend.
Well, there's a little age gap there. I
Okay.
occasionally talk to
But this
Rashard.
Really?
but this
You know,
is
like Josh Hart, for example.
Okay.
Like, and Josh is very much a FaceTime guy. I don't know if you have friends that FaceTime
Yeah,
you.
I got friends that are really into Face. I don't.
Yeah, Spencer Hawes, like
Yeah.
FaceTime guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? CP's a FaceTime guy as well.
But this is to my point about proximity and also understanding. It's like your friends, not that you have all your friends are in comedy or entertainment or anything like that, but part of friendship in general is understanding what you're going through. Understanding if you're taping your special tonight, maybe don't blow your phone up with a bunch of shit. You know what I mean? Understanding like the reality. And so I can understand why it's hard to make friends like that, because it's not like
no, dude, it's
have that sign.
I'm going to push back. And okay, so there's two buckets. The first is there's like common brethren of a craft. You play basketball, I do comedy, film, TV. So there's a level of understanding you have with those people where you're like, oh man, like a friend of mine went undrafted. I uniquely know what that pain would be like, or he's considering going overseas. I know what that stress could be like in a way Tommy or Hasan never could. That's why I'm like humbling myself before like people who actually had skin in the game. I had a friend, he auditioned for SNL. He didn't get it. He feels a certain way. I'm like, I know what that pain is more than like other people. Then there's another bucket where it's like you try to establish friendship outside of your little like myopic worldview. And that's what I was trying to establish with JJ outside of podcasting.
I think he's just auditioning to be your new best friend. I think that's what's happening.
Okay.
Right now.
Because I feel like
exactly
what's great is we have a lot in common.
So this may come across as you like shitting on me.
No.
But this is like a revelatory moment in my life. I mean, I've had a crush on you for like 5 years.
Let's go.
Like, this is gonna
Let's
be
go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
You need to sit on this couch right now. And I just gotta bounce.
It's a vulnerability thing. We can't even cry.
This is just
remember that? Like, you remember the first time you saw your dad cry? Like it was just a profound.
Dude, this is just. I'll tell you why this is annoying, because I've known this. I've known both of you for a long time.
Yeah.
We've done a bunch of shit together. We've done a bunch of stuff together. I knew this was like an obvious thing, and you guys both don't make the effort. Like, this is why we do the dinners, because of course this would happen.
Listen,
but you're in Dubai, or you're like,
I have zero
he's
desire.
on a.
Tommy does it for the IG pic.
We don't take IG
zero
pics.
Desire
In
to
feed
ever
IG
spend
pics.
time.
We don't take IG pics. This is. I don't even. This is not JJ's fault. This is completely your fault. JJ is available. JJ,
You're not available.
JJ
Here's the thing.
We
I'm
could have done
being
this
serious.
months
I
ago.
have zero desire to ever spend any time in Greenwich. It's just not my thing. Chelsea and
I'll
I. No. For you, Chelsea and I will come to
For dinner?
Greenwich with you and Bina.
For dinner. Oh
100%.
my God. Let's go.
100%.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm thrilled.
This is such a great moment.
What the hell were we talking about? I'm sorry.
I have a
I
question.
can't even
I have a
remember.
question for you about the performance thing.
Yeah.
This is early.
Do you see that performance and think he's an athlete?
You?
No. There goes the friendship.
Dude, I'm exerting. Dude, I'm working up there, bro.
How's your triceps now? Pretty good?
I mean, they're still.
They're still-
Yeah. I have Luca definition. Let's put it that way. Without the skill set, without the skills and the professional athlete thing.
When D Wade came on,
Yeah.
first time he came on,
Yep.
I thought one of the most interesting things that he said was he talked about JJ asked him, this was pre JJ retiring, and JJ
Yeah.
asked him what he was going to miss about the NBA because he had just retired, and he said the thing he was going to miss the most was performing. And basically, just like teammates that all that aside, he said the performance thing was the thing he was going to miss the most. I'm curious, we've talked about it a bunch on the show, your sort of personal take post remember that. Who do you think the best performers have been in recent memory in the league? Not even just like necessarily the best players, the best talent, but the guys who just like they are going to put on a show when they want to put on a show.
Steph, dude. It's Steph. It's like that. He is performing when he's on the basketball court. Like it's not like the game 4 in Boston.
Yeah.
And Draymond talked about this, on our show, but like when he's throwing fists and yelling and screaming and talking trash to the crowd and the bench, and it's like, dude, just 5 minutes into the game, bro. Like he was on one, and the no look shots, the crazy, like everything about him as a basketball player, like there's no separation to me. It's like basketball player / performer. Like, who do you want to go buy a ticket to see play basketball?
100%. Yeah.
You think he's the same?
He's on the list. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I think he's like that, and I think Luka's like that.
With
I think
anything
when
that's
you go see-
entertaining, we all as fans are going to the game to go, I want to see something I've never seen before. That's the feeling like I'm chasing. It's why you love going to a great boxing match, a great basketball game. You go to a great restaurant, you go to a great show. I am chasing that feeling of, I want to see something I've never seen before. Yeah.
Do you think there are this is kind of
By
weird.
the way, that's why like I empathize when the fans talk about load management and all that stuff. Because I remember
Interesting.
for my dad, I grew up, both my dad and mom are state employees. And so him taking me to a game once a year was a big deal. Spent a lot of money on it. And I could imagine, again, for like a government employee, like spending $80 to $100 like for those tickets. It's a lot of money, and it's a bummer. I remember we went to try to go see like Vince Carter. Vince was sitting, and it was like, oh damn, and you're just like, this is a bummer.
I'm very empathetic to that. I am, and I understand that gripe that fans would have when a player sits out. And like, I have respect for the OGs like Jordan. It's like, this might be the one. I think he said like, this might be the one chance that a guy, some 11-year-old kid gets to come and watch me play.
Right.
And he played. Guy, unless he was like significantly hurt, it's that the player side of it, that's not always on the players. I think we've said this before on the pod. It's not always on the players that are saying, I'm going to sit out tonight. I need a night off. A lot of times there's a performance team, and they have all these different metrics measuring you on a weekly basis, and they call it running hot. And they will like legitimately give you a heads up and be like, hey, all your data says you're running hot. You may have to sit out next week. Which game looks better for you? You want to sit out Tuesday? Well, Tuesday I'm playing in Brooklyn. My family lives in Brooklyn. So no, I want to play in Brooklyn. All right. Do you want to sit out Wednesday, the second night of a back-to-back? That maybe makes more sense. Okay, I'll do that.
What do you think the players owe the fans? What do you think? And I'm saying this as a performer, my industry is a little bit different. What do they owe? I've heard the version of, we owe you nothing. Like, if you don't like it, don't come to the games, don't watch.
A basic level of just professionalism. And professionalism to me means you're working at your craft, you're trying to get better, you're trying to win, you're trying to play hard, you're trying to be a good teammate. You acknowledge the fans. Like that's just basic professionalism. We talked about this before we went on. I think most guys get that.
Yeah.
I think in your industry, specifically with like stand-up or a Broadway show, right? You said there's no middleman, right?
Yeah, so
in the NBA, like
I owe the fans everything.
I think a lot of players feel like they owe something to their teammates or maybe the owner or the coach, and it's like, I get to perform in front of the fans, but I think there's like some sort of disconnect with athletes there.
Yeah,
and it's not intentional. It's not malicious. It's not malicious. And I don't think who said that we don't owe the fans anything.
I've just heard a version of that, of just like, I call these like the Draymond Green haikus, just in somewhere in his catalog of podcasts. And there's a little bit of like, you're right. Like, fine, if we're going to be really black and white, nobody owes anybody anything. Fine, if we're going to be like really blunt and harsh about it. But I remember I grew up loving the sport, and I remember like age 8 going to that first game, 10, 12, 14, 15. I don't think people realize how much of like Peja just turning and going like this to a bunch of, prepubescent Indian kids, what that meant to me and my friends. It really meant a lot. The rule for me is, as long as like my wife's not there and my kids aren't there, if you ask and you want to say hi, I'll say hi. Like always. To me, I just feel like I owe you that, because I'll never forget this, man. Like that window while people care is pretty small. It's gonna go to who are you pretty quick, and I've seen that in show business. I've seen the ebbs and flows of my career.
If you're a jerk. They'll remember.
Totally,
if you
but like
blow someone off, they will.
Yeah, what those moments that Peja, Mike Bibby, White Chocolate gave the city of Sacramento, us kids, like, and they really like showed love to the city when the national narrative was Sacramento as a whole. It means a lot. So even when I see Bobby Jackson now at Arden Fair Mall, I'm like, Bobby freaking Jackson. To me, that's maybe my take on it is a little bit different, of like, hey man, as long as they're being respectful and exhibiting some decorum, and you're not in dad mode or in husband mode, I think to be gracious in that moment is something that we've lost a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to acknowledge, like, we wouldn't have the NBA without fans, right?
Yeah,
I mean, how do you think we have revenue? It's like because people watch and people come to the games. Why do we have a jersey patch now? Because games everywhere, all over the world, and people watch. There are fans. To your point about,
but decorum and respect goes two ways. So I agree with some of the comments.
To your point, I was going to say that. To your point about interaction, between self and fans, I had a really weird stretch, like partially because of what happened at Duke, where very early in my NBA career, like if you came at me sideways or you came at me when I was at dinner,
hair, JJ. I remember spiky hair, Orlando JJ.
Frat guy JJ.
Oh, dude, LA looks gel. You were angry.
I would be a jerk. I would be a jerk to people.
You were really. By the way, I was just gonna give you a compliment. You were really jacked during that era. Your buys, your tries on your Wikipedia.
This is
stop.
escalated.
Listen. Your buys and tries on your Wikipedia. Were you playing in Orlando? Your buys and tries look like Tommy's now.
Yeah.
Really great vasodilation, really great like separation in the muscles. I do think about this a lot. And JJ's looking great.
This is why you're sending
anybody in the graphics department, pull it up. JJ's looking.
Voice notes.
Yeah, the hair was a little bit aggressive, but like the body. JJ had the body. You got a little bit softer like during those Dallas years, but like, woo. LA looks JJ Redick. Like, oh man, let's go.
Anyways, I was going to say,
yeah.
First of all, to that comment, during the lockout, I was like a maniac. I just was like, I'm going to work. I was coming off an injury, surgery. I'm going to just get back in shape. And so my wife was seeing this trainer, and he happened to be a bodybuilder. Like that was what he did prior to training people. He was a bodybuilder. So that for 5 months, however long the thing was, I lifted weights with him 4 days a week. I didn't gain any weight. I was still like 196-ish, but I was so ripped that year. And I remember a lot of guys didn't think we were going to have a season. So there were a lot of guys that came back into camp really, really out of shape. And I remember going to the doctor for my physical. And he's like, all right, take your shirt off. And I took my shirt off. He's like, oh, I can tell you've been working out. And I was like, that's a great compliment. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. No, but I was going to say.
It was just some doctor in a 24-hour fitness gym.
I was going to say, though, that there was so at some point, I don't know, 22, 23-ish, I was like, all right, and maybe I've been a dick since then. But at some point, I was like, if I leave my house, I'm just going to be nice to people.
Yeah.
Just gonna try to be nice to people, And it's like, do you mind? No, I don't mind. Of course I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind at all. Was there ever a stage in your life where you didn't feel comfortable? You didn't enjoy the fan interactions? Did you ever have that sort of rebelliousness?
No, man.
It?
I mean, first of all, I'm not like I'm not at that level of fame. There's people watching this like, who is this? So no, I'm not at that point. But my line for me, there was one time where I was like, yeah, this is my personal line. I'm not going to cross this. My wife was breastfeeding, and someone came up to us on a plane and was taking a photo, and I was like, hey man, like I'm holding up a sheet so she can breastfeed. And he's like, it's cool, bro. I'll cut her out. And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, no, we're not doing this.
I don't want you to have a photo on your phone of my wife breastfeeding.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Like, and he's like, but I love Homecoming King, but I don't love you loving my wife that much. So that's my line. Or like times I'm at the airport and I'm with my daughter. My daughter, she's 4. She's still very young, and she runs around. And so sometimes people will be like, hey, can we stop and take a photo? And I'm like, hey, in this moment, like she's in my custody. I got to make sure she's safe and she's all right. I can't do that right now. And she deserves me to just be attentive. I'm not like you where I'm podcasting while my children are here.
You were talking earlier about sort of legacy as it relates to athletes and sort of how it relates to your own life. And
what my line is.
Yeah. And you have 2 kids now. I've got 2 boys, and you certainly start thinking about that more. Like how has your perspective sort of shifted on that as a father?
Totally. I think for me, one of the biggest things that really changed in my life is this idea, and we were talking about this, of winning. And what does winning mean? And I love you, man, but I'm just going to say this. One of the things that I find to be the most irritating about the sports talk shows is they listicle everything of like, and I thought this comment that you gave was great, of just because you say you like someone, it's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean you dislike somebody else's game. But what they do is they really make it this one bucket type of winning. Who right now the obsession is LeBron. You know, it's always this LeBron, Kobe, MJ debate ad infinitum. But to me, the older I've gotten, and I've been in different parts of my career, I've been cast on a show. I've had my own show. I've had my own like tours. I've done specials. Now we're in films, pre-production on films, casting people in films. I'm realizing the game is so much longer than that. And to me, real winning is it's not just the points on the board and winners and losers. You know, during the pandemic, everybody was watching The Last Dance. And they were like, MJ's the ultimate winner. And I'm like, what window? And by what metric? To me, the real winner is Steve Kerr. In my opinion, what are my buckets that I'm classifying this as? Professional satisfaction, personal satisfaction, sanity and clarity of mind. Bro, I don't have to say this. You watch some of these clips of these guys that played on the Bulls, you're like, man, bro, get it together. Like clarity and sanity in your mind. The story doesn't end well for a lot of these guys. And to me, Steve, what he's gone through, his father was killed, murdered as a young kid. For him to go through that, be a bubble player, be a role player, be a GM, and have a meaningful, healthy relationship with his children, with his spouse, that to me is the real like winning. And I don't think we look at winning as this 70 to, God willing, 80-year thing about the story of your life. I'm starting to get gray in I'm not what I was when I was like 25, and that's okay. But I think about Bina and my kids and my role now as a producer, director, writer, and those things. I'm like, yeah, I hope the totality of that is defining what it means to win. And whoever frames the message, that's what we value in society. So now that you're a member of the media, and I was, working in media for years, how you frame that is really important. When Walter Isaacson had his books, Jobs, in 2009, 2010, that really shaped what winning was in entrepreneurship and business. And to me, I was like, wait, is that winning? Like, you have an estranged daughter, you lose touch, but fine, I got the iPhone 6. Like, we need to have a holistic thing on what it means to win. MJ, Last Dance, he's the ultimate winner. During what years? We're talking about 84 to 98? So we're not going to include that little Wizards run. We're just not going to include this run. We're not going to talk about, I'm not even going to get into the personal stuff. That's not fair. But we know what I'm talking about here. To me, that's the totality of this. God rest the dead. I remember reading Kobe Bryant's Players Tribune letter. He writes about family and cutting people off. Man, there's a lot of pain in that. There's a lot of pain in that letter towards their siblings and family members and loved ones. And there's part of me that's like, there are so many kids I know that got Kobe 6 Pro Tros from the top to the bottom shelf. And they wish they could cut their own finger off to be Kobe. And I'm like, would you also trade in the fact that like there were years he wasn't on speaking terms with his family? That's also part of the deal too. Because I've been a fan. I've always played that game. I wish I could be that person. So when you talk about Mamba mentality, is that part of it worth it too? And I think that is not being talked about in the winning conversation. And so I hope when it's all said and done, people remember me, that not only like the jokes that I told and the stories that I told, those check and make muster. But when Bina, Najmi, Seema, Aisha, and my children talk about me, and my cousins and my uncles and aunts talk about me, they're like, yeah, man, he was a really good, solid person through and through.
That was beautiful.
Sorry,
that was
great.
great. And look, I think, I'd have to re-listen to what you just said. I might tend to agree with all of that. And we brought this up earlier. But when I think about Dame a lot, because Dame has stayed in Portland and he hasn't been to the NBA Finals, and he's signed these extensions, and fans have their opinion of that route. And he has talked about the fact that he is a winner and is winning at life. And I'm the biggest co-signer of that. And I was never that good. I knew I was never that good. But there was a stage in my life where winning a basketball game was the only thing. It was the only thing. It's what kept me up at night. And at some point, and it wasn't right when I had Knox, but it was certainly in that era of turning 29, 30 and growing up a little bit. I reframed what winning was to me.
Yes.
And I was a much happier person after that. And I think the listification, as you called it.
Yeah, the
like,
ESPN.
It
Bron
gets
better
clicks.
than Kobe,
No, it gets clicks and it gets views, and it fills airtime, right? It fills airtime. But you can't tell me Damian Lillard isn't winning. He's not a winner, right? It's the rings culture. It's just not. It's not. It's not healthy. But guys that have great perspective on it, I think can deal with the criticism. Hasan, this has been awesome, and we appreciate the time, and I'm really glad we became best friends.